This is Tim. The more that I've sold, the more that I've coached, the more that I've consulted in the high ticket sales space, the more I've realized that scripting and that technique is not what takes a closer to 20K plus per month in commissions. It's actually inner game. I've been around sales now in the high ticket info product space for 2 years. I've sold millions of dollars. I've gotten paid 15, 20K months of commissions across different offers. I've coached reps who have gotten to 20, 25K plus in commissions across multiple different offers. And I've consulted for businesses, for guys like NeroKnowledge. I've consulted for info product owners, for coaches, for consultants who have taken their business from 30, 40K per month to 100, 150K plus per month using the processes and the consulting and the systems that I have. Now, one of the things I realized is that in order to go from good to great as a sales rep, which means breaking past those plateaus of like 5K, maybe even 10K commission months, the thing that actually separates reps who want to go from a decent level to a level of excellence where they've changed their lives completely, because let's be real, at 5 to 10K per month, you have not changed your life. You're okay. But really where you start to change your life, where the game is different, is 10, 15K, 20K plus, which is what our top reps do consistently. And getting to that point, I've noticed more and more it's not about the scripting you follow. Yes, there absolutely is a baseline that needs to be established, and I'll say it as much as anybody on this channel. I've said it very openly that having a script is important. You cannot learn sales without a basic script. You can't learn sales without basic techniques. You need to learn objection handling protocols, as our program is called, protocols. You need to learn these things. Absolutely, 100%, it's a non-negotiable. You have to have a good baseline. But at the highest levels, what actually separates those who perform at the highest level and go from good to great is the internal composition, the inside, the inner game. And I break this into 4 quadrants. These 4 quadrants, actually, I'm going to share with you in this video. I have a Miro whiteboard that we get into later. If you scroll down below, you can see it. At the bottom, I end up sharing my screen. I'm going to go into a very, very, very helpful piece of training on these 4 inner game quadrants. So make sure you stay for that, because will change the game for you if you properly apply it and put it into practice. But before we go into that, I want to talk about inner game. And I want to set the foundation for what we're talking about today. The 5 stages of opportunity that Alex Hormozi talks about are essentially the perfect example of the high ticket sales journey, because all of you go through these 5 stages of opportunity. I've gone through them as well myself. The first stage that we have is uninformed optimism, which is where you just find out about the opportunity. You're all excited. You're buzzing with excitement. You have these high hopes and you think, oh my goodness, I see the potential to make a lot of money with this. That's what everyone starts off when they think of high ticket sales. You know, this is exciting. I'm going to make money. And you see this video, people promising you make 10K per month from your laptop within 30 to 90 days. This video is not for you. This training will not help you if you are still there. If you are still there, I don't really talk to people that are in that space. Normally, if we have someone who comes to work with us and they're like, I just found out about sales a week ago, 2 days ago, 2 weeks ago, I say, yeah, go look at my free stuff, get more information on how the industry works, get some training under your belt, some role plays, and then come back and we can help. Okay, so that's not for you. The second stage is informed pessimism. Okay, this is where reality starts to hit you really hard, where you realize, okay, this is actually more difficult than I thought. You realize getting on an offer that's good is not so simple, because you have to be skilled first to get on a good offer, and people have to actually believe in you, right? That's tough, right? You realize, oh, handling objections is not easy. It's not easy to, just because I'm closing on V-Shred doesn't mean that I'm going to make money, because I have to actually take money from someone. I have to get someone to overcome their own fear, lead them to where they need to be, and close, right? And then we have the valley of despair. That's the third stage. This is this critical low. It's where most people give up, where you hit a kind of a rock bottom. Maybe you've done some kind of program, you've invested, maybe $3,000 in or $4,000 in one of the mainstream big programs out there, like the big influencers that all promise these things in sales. And then you're like, okay, I'm one of 500 people in this program, one of 200. You're going into the group calls, the influencer is saying some things, you meet her or him once every Monday in a group. You ask questions to your CSM, who responds to you within the day, right? And you comment your little wins. I did 2 role plays today. Cool, we get it. That's valley of despair oftentimes, because you're like, okay, is this industry really for me? Am I going to make it? This video is still not for you if you're in valley of despair. But then we get to number 4, which is informed optimism. So you've actually been through a program, you've actually gotten on an offer, you actually are making a decent amount of money. Maybe you're doing 3K, 4K, 5K, you're maybe a setter, maybe you're a closer, you've had an 8K month, right? You're floating in that space of, I like to call it the 3 to 8K hellhole. That's what I call it. This is where I was when I really locked in and started to get better at sales, and then I broke past that limit, went 10K, 15K plus, in commissions. This is that mark you're at. Maybe you do a 5K month here, then you go down to 3, then the show up rate sucks, but you close a little more deals, so you go to 4, right? That's what we call informed optimism. You realize that you could have success. But what's funny is here is where a lot of sales reps kind of peter out and they kind of die out. It's not even because they can't perform. It's not that. It's because that extra tool set, that extra skill set of the inner game, they're missing to go from good to great as a rep. That's what happens. And then the 5th level, and this is where I take my people to in protocols, is success and mastery. It's where you've learned the game, you've adapted, you've started to achieve results, you've started to achieve a high level of competence. So our protocols training is essentially all about going from that level 3 where value despair, and you're like, okay, what do I do and how do I get better? All of the reps who come to us are there, and then we take them through 4 and 5. That's the goal, to where you've changed your life and you're achieving mastery of the skill. Sales, and this is the foundation of this training today, sales is a mental game. It's a very, very deeply mental game, especially when we're talking short cycle, high ticket sales. It's a mental game. It's not for the faint of heart. And a lot of people coming into this believe that sales is kind of this thing where you just show up. You show up and have a conversation and you'll get paid. But they don't realize 2 things that are really important here. Number 1, you're on a timer. When you're on a sales call, you're being timed because you have an hour. You don't have 2 hours to just chat with someone. Sometimes you may have an empty slot in the calendar afterwards, but generally you're on a timer, which means whatever you want to accomplish on the call, you need to do it within 45 minutes to an hour. You need to make it happen fast. So that puts pressure on you. Secondly, you're taking multiple calls per day, and you're getting rejected. So you're taking anywhere from 6 to 8 calls per day consistently. This leads to a lot of fatigue. So you get tired out, right? Because you're taking a bunch of calls and you're talking to a bunch of people who may not be interested in what you have to sell, or they're somewhat interested, but they have, reservations, they have limiting beliefs, they have internal barriers to just starting and committing and making change. So what happens, oftentimes sales reps lose this mental game and you burn out. So then what happens is you go from training to training to training, looking for the right technique, looking for the right technical structure. You don't have it because you're hoping that you get saved by technique, when in actuality, what is going to save you, what is going to change your life, what is going to change the game for you is the inner, those quadrants that I'm going to get into. In most reps, like I've said, they fail out around 3 and 4. And the reason they fail out is because they're always looking for the next strategy, the next tweak in terms of technical that's going to save them, when they're not actually mastering and committing to a system, right? So as an example, what we do, protocols, it is technique based to an extent, but we follow a system. The system is called the protocol. What is the way in which you execute a call? What is the way in which you lead? How do you do things the right way? And this is the secret sauce behind Inner Game. Inner Game is a framework. It's actually beyond sales. It's a life system. It's a life framework that deeply, deeply affects the way that you interact with people, the way that you interact on your calls, the way that you interact with the world. It's deeply powerful. And I learned about Inner Game. This is actually an old term that I learned from the dating space. When I was a dating coach, I learned about Inner Game, and it was not when I was a coach, but when I was learning dating, actually. I was a nightclub promoter back in New York, and there was a bunch of guys that were in this community where they would go out and approach girls, do cold approach, work on their confidence skills and attracting women. So that was my first entry point into communication skills. I was a nightclub promoter, and then I was in this dating space. And there was a thing that the guys would use called Inner Game. And it was there's 2 levels. There's the outer game, which is everything that you say and do, how do you attract the girl with what you say. But then there was the inner game, which is who you are as an individual, your belief systems as a man, your confidence, your ideas, your values, how you view yourself in the world. And that was actually the fun part. The fun part meaning that for myself, that was the thing that took me from being a guy who struggled with women all his life to being someone who was actually quite good and could attract really amazing women in my life, and eventually, now build a relationship with a really cool girl, live an amazing life, right? And it was the inner game. It was actually who I became. And what I noticed was in sales, this same principle applies. It's the same thing. It's the inner game. It's not just what I say, the technique that I use, the framing, all these little pieces of scripting and things like that. It's the belief structures that go into you being able to deliver these ideas. So we're going to crack into the Miro now. I'm going to break down to you these 4 quadrants, and I'll see you at the end of that. We'll end the video outside of the Miro board, but I want to give you some training on this so that you understand how to use Intergame and plug it into your process to take you from 5K, 6K, 7K commission months as a closer and take you to those months of 10, 15, 25K plus per month, the way that our best people are doing, okay? Check it out. Let's dive into the whiteboard now. So this is the best way to understand Intergame when it comes to sales, when it comes to performance. I break Intergame into 4 quadrants, into these 4 specific structures. So we have belief systems, which is number 1, and then we've got your emotions, and then we've got the self, and then we've got presence, right? These are your 4 quadrants. Now, I break them into these 4 quadrants because Intergame really can be categorized. It can be categorized into these 4 sections, and you need mastery over all 4 of these if you want to perform at the highest level. Yes, when it comes to sales, but also in life. The principles that I'm giving you here are beyond just sales. There are also life principles, but I found that these quadrants are the best way to categorize them and to understand how to actually perform and how to execute at a very high level. So if we're breaking down these quadrants, the first stage is what we call beliefs, okay? Beliefs, when it comes to the inner, when it comes to the mastering the inner game, your beliefs are how you think the world works. Okay, so there's a reality that you could live in where you believe that the world is a place that's difficult to make money. You believe that the world is a place where people are out to get you. You believe that the world is a place where money doesn't come easy, right? Or you believe the world is a place where having success is only reserved for a select few. But your beliefs will oftentimes have a massive, will always, not often, will oftentimes have a massive effect on how the people around you see you. Your beliefs will affect how the people that are around you respond to you. So when you get onto a sales call, if your beliefs are in the gutter, which means you come from a position, let's say, of scarcity in life, like I'll give an example, a lot of sales reps who want their clients to invest in themselves, who want their leads to invest and make a decision, they haven't invested in themselves at a high level without saying, I need to think about it, or having like a high level of resistance and lack of assertiveness or confidence with investing in themselves. That's an example of your own beliefs. That's also related to the self too, but that's an example of your beliefs. The way that you invest in your own success is going to reflect in how you communicate and how you present ideas, right? So the first one is beliefs. What do you think about the world? I'll give you a really good example of this. When I was selling my first offer, I was selling a dating offer. And I got that offer. They didn't know I was a dating coach actually previously at all. So I didn't use me having been a dating coach to get the offer. I just was applying for a bunch of roles. And it happened that was one of the ones that I connected with. And it was the second offer that I was on. And this dating offer, because I had been already in the dating space, teaching dating at quite a high level and, going down this journey of success with women and understanding dating dynamics. And I had been a nightclub promoter as well. Because I had all this prior context and history in the dating space, my beliefs around dating and the dating game, when it came to like abundance, when it came to your ability to attract women, your ability to build relationships, my belief systems were quite solid and quite developed, which gave me an advantage on the offer because I was able to communicate those belief systems to my prospects with relative ease. The reason why I was able to do that is because I actually had those belief systems ingrained in me. So the first piece of Intergame is how you think about the world and how you believe the world actually works. There's 2 kinds of people. There's people who believe that the world is an inherently difficult and challenging place where they can't have access to opportunity, where they don't deserve opportunity. And then you have another group of people who believe that the world is a place full of opportunity, full of abundance, full of freedom, right? The way you think the world works is going to show up on your calls. I'll give you another great example. I'm training a couple of my one-to-one guys on this right now. With when you have a prospect who says the problem why we haven't had success is due to the economy or is due to the industry or is due to something outside of myself and what I can take responsibility on, if your belief system is so ingrained in responsibility and ownership, which I'm going to go more into when we talk about the self, but if your belief system is like the world is my oyster and I can make money and I don't outsource blame to anyone else. I don't blame the economy. I don't blame the society. I take responsibility. That belief system about the world is going to show up in how you sell. It's going to show up as an example in how you reframe, because as you know, reframing is a huge part of what I do. I teach a lot on reframing. I teach a lot on psychological principles of control and influence. So if you haven't identified in your own heart, in your own soul, that the idea of the world is mine and I have control over my destiny, I have control over my path. If you haven't internalized that belief around the world, literally in your communication, this lack of belief is going to show up. So then when you're saying, how do I handle an objection? If you want to handle an objection, but you haven't sorted this belief in yourself, you're not going to have leverage. And the reason you won't have leverage is because you haven't done the work internally. Again, the inner game, you haven't done the work needed to be able to communicate at that level, right? So it's going to be friction, internal friction, and a lack of internal stability and cohesion with what you are selling and how you're trying to sell it. The second piece after beliefs is the emotions, right? In order to master the game of sales, in order to perform at a high level, you have to be emotionally grounded, you have to be emotionally present, and you have to be emotionally regulated. Now, these three things mean different things, like the grounded, present, and regulated, they mean different things. One of the things that I always emphasize with my people and emphasize with our protocols clients is the idea that you don't want to be thinking 2-3 steps ahead, right? You don't want to do that. You want to be present within the call. You want to be present within the call, meaning your emotional state shouldn't be fluctuating. Whenever I get on an offer, and I just recently got an offer for selling e-commerce, a high-ticket e-commerce offer, and I got on this offer, and I noticed that going into the offer, I had a higher level of anxiety than normal because I hadn't sold a biz op before. I'd never sold, actually, I lied. My first offer was a biz op, but I did that for 2.5 months and I sucked at it. It's not even in my memory half the time. But I haven't really sold a biz op, at a high level. And this is a good company. They do a lot of good things. And going into the offer, I had a high level of anxiety because I was like, okay, I have to perform now. Tim's like this guy making YouTube videos. I'm making YouTube videos. I have to perform. I have to do well. So I went into the offer without a high level of emotional control, which, as based on this, as you guys know, doesn't actually help me. So what I had to do is I had to work on my breathing. I had to work on my pacing. I had to work on the stillness in terms of how I viewed myself on the offer. And I had to go into a space where I created grounded energy, calm, grounded, still energy, regulated my emotions, go into a space of deep emotional regulation, stillness, and calm, right? And became very present and aligned with what I was selling. That was the only alternative. That was the only option that I had. And me doing this allowed me to boost my numbers in the second week. The first week was rough. Like the first week, I was like, fuck, what am I doing here? How do I survive? Second week went, 3 for 3, just boom, smashed it, right? And the reason why, meaning the reason why I was able to make this change within such a quick time period was because I watched my calls and I went back and looked at what I was actually doing live. I looked at the calls, I looked at how I was communicating, how I was selling, and then I was able to ground myself in the process, which means not overthinking and saying, let me get to the next steps, which is something even I have to constantly remind myself, don't fall victim to that. Don't do that. Because it's very easy to do that. When you're coaching and training, that's one skill set versus when you're live on calls, that's another thing, right? And I've made really good money in sales, but I had to remind myself of who I am outside of just running protocols and coaching. It's like, hey, you're actually in the game live right now. There's a different level of emotional control you need to have, which came down to, again, me being grounded. It came down to me being present. It came down to me regulating my emotions, and this started with the breathing. And then another technique, a really cool tool, also was going into a space of humor where I care deeply about what happens next, and I developed this detachment from the specific outcome of, oh my goodness, I have to close this person at this specific time. I removed myself from that outcome and went more into a state of humor, more into a state of, it's just a good time. Whether I close or not, it doesn't really matter. Now, of course, I was attached to the outcome, meaning I want to close. I absolutely want to, and I hold that standard for myself. I hold that standard for our people. But the attachment of, I have to make this happen, and then losing my presence, right? Losing my regulation. And when I say presence here, I'm talking about emotional presence. And I'll explain more what that means when we go down to the next section, which is actual physical presence, right? But me letting go of the emotional deregulation and all the up and downs, that up and down cycle, I was able to ground myself in the call and just and chill and kind of just flow, if that makes sense, get into a flow state. The second piece, and this is another big one where a lot of sales reps are missing the inner game and the internal composure, is presence, developing a high level of presence. So presence here, I don't mean emotional presence. I'm not talking about where you feel emotionally grounded, you feel stable, and you are emotionally present with yourself. That's what we mean when we go into the emotions here. This kind of presence, what I mean is more logical. Okay, this presence is an actual practical active exercise that you take on. That's a task that you actually do, the way that you run your calls, by being present. So presence comes down to these three things. It comes down to your attention, it comes down to your level of focus, and it comes down to your level of control. Okay, so attention means what you are paying attention to, what you are basically looking at on the call, not physically looking at, but what you are listening for. So when you're on a call, you need to pay attention to primarily two things: the prospect's word, their language, as we call it, their scripting, what they're saying, and then their body language. Those are the two things that I'm very present of on the call. I'm very aware. My attention is on those things. I'm looking at the words that they're saying. You know, what are they saying in terms of, if I'm selling a fitness offer, let's say, and a woman's telling me, or anyone tells me, you know, I've been struggling to lose weight because I'm so busy with the kids. My attention is aware. I'm aware that she is outsourcing responsibility on her fitness journey, outsourcing that to, hey, it's the kids and the busyness is why I'm not losing the weight. So what does that mean? I'm going to need to reframe that. Most likely, I'm going to need to have a dialogue with her around how she does have the time and how she can't outsource blame to the kids. How I do that, of course, is up to strategy and technique, right? But I need to be aware of that. And these inner game quadrants, by the way, the reason that these things are so powerful is because they absolutely allow you to create a better call. Because if you have all this technique down, you're going to come across as very, very robotic and very unnatural. Whereas if you have the inner game down and you have the internal belief structures, the internal emotional structures, the presence, if you have that locked in, the way you communicate ideas and the way you communicate information is going to be way more powerful, right? So going back to presence, there's attention, and which is what I listen to, what I pay attention to on the call. Then we have focus, which is what I focus on in terms of the dialogue, what I focus on giving my attention to specifically. So there's the attention, right? Paying attention to what is being said, but then there's focus, which is where I choose to give the attention, right? So a lot of sales reps, again, are highly unfocused when selling because you're thinking 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. But I'm focused only on what's in front of me. It's like a laser. It's like I have tunnel vision. If you see the horses that are running on the track and they have those blinders on the side so they can't look left and right, that's how I am when I'm on a call. I'm focused on what's in front of me. I'm not focused on what's ahead, what's behind, what's left, what's right. It's just what's in front of me in terms of the conversation. And then control, having actual control over your process and not getting thrown off. So control, sometimes you'll deal with a prospect that's going to challenge you. Sometimes you'll deal with the prospect that says, hey, I want to go into pricing now, or can you tell me more what you guys do, or have a bunch of questions. Not even coming in bad faith, but you'll just deal with the prospect that is coming from that position. It's up to you, using this fourth quadrant or the third quadrant of presence, to establish control over the call and dictate the path and where the call goes. The final piece of the inner game quadrants goes down to the self. So the self is your view of you. So beliefs are your view, again, about the world, about success, about opportunity. But then we have the view of you and how you see yourself as an individual. Okay. So I'd like to break it down into these three things. Number one is responsibility, taking a massive amount of responsibility over what happens next on the call. So it's like this person's future is in my hands. And it's something that I believe called the mandate of heaven. I just talked about it in one of my recent YouTube videos where it's like the ancient, this is a real thing that I think is so cool in history. The ancient Chinese emperors for the different Chinese dynasties, they believed that God had actually mandated to them the ability to give back to the people and the ability to create basically a kingdom that God had given to them. They believed that God had given them the divine right to lead the people. And it wasn't just the emperors that believed this, the kingdom believed it. They believed that the emperor was divinely appointed by God to be the person to get the empire to the next level and to take them to where they needed to be. And I believe this on my sales calls. I believe this when I operate in the world. I believe that I have the divine right given by God. Literally, God gave me the keys to be able to help people transform their lives. Whether I do that in a format of sales, whether someone pays me on a sales call to then access information, education, and training that will change their lives, or whether that divine right is through me training protocols and through helping other sales reps create freedom and abundance in their lives, grow as individuals, grow into becoming the kind of people they want to be. Whatever it is, I believe in that divine responsibility. And that responsibility comes down to ownership, which is next. On your calls, do you own your calls? Do you own the positioning on your calls? Meaning where you are, meaning how you are running your calls. So I take extreme ownership when I'm on a Zoom call, when I'm on Google Meets, whatever platform we're using. I'm taking massive ownership over what happens next on the call. Not responsibility now over the prospect. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking ownership over the outcomes of the call itself. Literally ownership over my entire sales flow, my entire sales process. I take ownership of it because I genuinely believe there is no other option other than that extreme ownership. And then we have leadership. Ownership leaks into leadership. I believe that I'm a leader. On my calls, I'm the person leading the call, and it's the prospect's responsibility to follow that path of leadership on the call. And if they don't, I'm going to put them in their place. I'm going to show them, hey, I don't need to show them meaning from a place of ego, but it's in a place lacking ego. It's just a place of, hey, this is my call. We're going to do things this way. Are you going to play ball with that, or are you going to resist it, and are you going to push back? I have to do this. Does this make sense? Like, I have to actually do this because this specifically is the identity frame. This is the identity frame that I want my prospects to follow. You know how we say identity framing? This is the identity frame that I want them to have, taking responsibility over their own future, right? Becoming present with their goals, creating and recognizing the emotional weight of where they want to be, being grounded, present, and regulating themselves with a better future, aligning with it on all levels. This is not some people hear this and are like, no, but it's just the technique I need. It's not just a technique. It's literally this stuff, because the identity that I'm creating here with these 4 quadrants, beliefs, emotion, presence, and self, this is directly aligned with the identity that I want my prospects to have on call. So how can I expect them to have that identity if I don't have it myself, right? So we will go more into training on identity work. We'll go more into training on framing. We'll go more into training on leadership. All of this is going to be coming soon. And I already have made training on it. And before I go into any of that more, we need to establish that these quadrants, beliefs, emotions, presence, and self, I've embodied them in myself through mastery of the inner game and mastery of my internal process of the way that I view myself, the way that I view the world, the way that I show up emotionally, and the way that I build presence and live through presence on my calls. This is the game. This is the game of the inner, the self, inner game mastery. This is how it works. Okay, take this, use it. Let's continue training and getting better. So now that you understand these 4 quadrants, I need to make it clear it's not enough to understand it conceptually. You need to make it a commitment. If you believe this, if you believe that this works, if you believe that the inner game is the thing that you need to go from good to great as a rep, if you believe that's the case, the next thing is committing to it, right? It's not enough to just understand it as a concept. And I'll tell you how. How the commitment is made is you have to be able to close yourself. This is an exercise that we actually run through once a year in protocols. I call it the rite of passage, where I take everyone through a sales call. Not a sales call with a prospect, not a sales call where I'm role playing, not a sales call where I do a call review, but a sales call on themselves. Can you close yourself? Can you close yourself on the idea of the commitment that you want to have for your future? Can you close yourself on urgency? Can you close yourself on willingness? Can you close yourself on being an action taker? Can you do it? Because I know a lot of you know the game. A lot of you know this stuff. A lot of you see the videos. You see the videos from myself, from other sales creators. You see it. I know you see it, but the commitment isn't fully there. The inner game isn't there because you haven't walked yourself through the sales process. So all the questions that I ask in fear, the questions I ask in desire, future pacing, consequence questions, holy grail, I ask those questions to myself daily. I live those questions, right? Where do I want to be? When I'm in that position where I have created a life where I'm bringing in multi-6 figures per month for myself and my family, what does that do for me personally outside of just the money? What does it really do? That's a question I have in my scripting, but I ask that to myself. The scripting is deeply, deeply valuable, but the inner game comes as a practice when you commit beyond the concept, but when you commit to asking these questions for yourself. So I'm going to give you a challenge here. I'll give you something that should help you. Go and future pace yourself today. Go and take yourself through a sales call through our scripting. If you don't know how to do it, look at my scripting here on the channel. Look at my process. I give it all away for free, right? Look, the process that I used to have closed 2.4 million plus in high ticket sales, I give that process away. So go through that process and do it on yourself. Ask yourself the tough questions. Ask yourself the hard questions that are going to change your life. Ask yourself the questions that are going to lead to you committing to a better path and committing to a better future. Ask yourself those questions and do the inner game on yourself, because it doesn't start with everyone else, it starts with you. If you can do that and you can lock in on the inner game, the quadrants, right? The 4 quadrants that we talked about, the beliefs, the self, the emotions, the presence. If you can lock in on those quadrants in yourself and start by future pacing you, by going consequence on you, by assigning a holy grail to you, you will change your life, and change your life meaning because you will master the game of sales and you will create income. You will create freedom for yourself and for your family. Okay, that's what I urge you to do. That's the challenge I have for you. Go do it, embody this, and go change your life with it, okay? I will see you on the next one. If you'd like me to help you, down below you can book a strategy call with my team. It's a call where there's no sales call. There's no pitch. It's 15 minutes where we see if we can help you. And if we can help you, if you feel like it'd be a good fit for us to help you, we'll invite you to book a demo call. And if we feel like we can't help you at this time, we'll give you access to a bunch of free resources and trainings that we've got that can help your journey and help you move forward in high-ticket sales. Either way, there's nothing you got to lose. Book a call with my team. Okay? I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye. Take care. Go make some money and change your life, change your family's life.